Today's passage is Genesis 40, 1:11. Let's read together. Sometime later the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." Amen. In today's passage, we find Joseph in prison. He was there because he had been falsely accused of assaulting his master's wife. However, God was with Joseph, granting him favor in the eyes of others, and giving him success in all that he did. By God's grace, Joseph found favor with the warden and was put in charge of all the affairs of the prison. And because God was at work, everything he did prospered. As we heard in yesterday's sermon, although Joseph was in a physical prison, he lived in the spiritual freedom that God had granted him, a true state of liberty. During this time, a significant event occurred. The king's chief cupbearer and chief baker were confined to the same prison where Joseph was, which was in the house of Potiphar, the captain of the guard. This was a major development because these two men had immense political influence. The chief cupbearer managed the royal wine service, and the chief baker oversaw the preparation of all the king's meals. In ancient times, the fear of poisoning was constant, so the food and wine the king consumed were directly linked to his survival. Therefore, the cupbearer and baker were men the king trusted with his very life. This close bond, built on such deep trust, translated into significant political influence. Yet, 2 of these powerful officials were imprisoned at the same time. They were awaiting trial, meaning their guilt had not yet been confirmed, and they could potentially be restored to their positions. Therefore, Potiphar could not treat these 2 men carelessly. Since they might be reinstated, he had to ensure they were well cared for, to avoid any trouble or resentment later. Potiphar needed to entrust this task to someone competent and trustworthy. So, what did Potiphar do, and how did Joseph respond? The person Potiphar chose to serve these important men was Joseph. Logically, such a task would have been given to the warden, an Egyptian official. Instead, Potiphar assigned this duty to Joseph, a Hebrew slave, the very prisoner accused of assaulting his own wife. Potiphar did this for one reason. Despite everything, he had an undeniable trust in Joseph. Let's examine Joseph's heart and actions in this situation, looking first at his attitude before being assigned to the officials, and second, at his conduct after. First, even before he was assigned to attend to the 2 officials, Joseph had already found victory in his hardship. He had been thrown into prison under a false accusation. He could have been filled with anger, given up in despair, and lost all hope. But Joseph navigated this painful season with faith. In his difficult situation, he relied on God, and through God's grace, Joseph was victorious day by day. Because Joseph trusted God and overcame his trials through that grace, he could faithfully carry out his assigned tasks, experiencing the success that God provided. Joseph was not shackled by his past, wallowing in pain or despair. It was because he relied on God and walked in victory that Potiphar felt he could entrust him with this important work. After being put in charge of the 2 officials, Joseph remained consistently faithful. Let's read verse 4. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them, after they had been in custody for some time. Amen. In verse 4 we see the word attended. This word means to serve or to minister. It is the same word used in Genesis 39:4 to describe Joseph serving Potiphar in his household. In the original Hebrew, this is the same word used for priests and Levites as they came before God to minister and worship. Thus, Joseph attended to the 2 officials with the same heart of service that he had shown Potiphar, and with the same reverence that priests showed when they ministered before God. This quality in Joseph is beautifully illustrated in verses 6 and 7. Let us read them together. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" Amen. Joseph observed their condition and noticed the sadness on their faces. As their attendant, he could have easily ignored them and avoided getting involved. Asking them what was wrong might only create more work for himself. Yet Joseph looked beyond his duties and showed genuine concern, asking them why they were sad. This question opened the door for them to share their dreams and for him to interpret them. In this, Joseph truly served them. While preparing this sermon, another remarkable aspect of Joseph's character struck me. The person who gave him this task was Potiphar. Joseph willingly, positively, and wholeheartedly carried out the task given to him even by Potiphar. It's easy to work diligently for someone we like and respect, but Potiphar was the man who had thrown him into prison based on a false accusation. If the task had been given by an enemy, most people would have done the bare minimum, or been reluctant to work hard at all. But Joseph was not like that. He gave his best even to the task assigned by Potiphar. This brings to mind the name of Joseph's firstborn son Manasseh, which means, to make one forget. By naming his son this, Joseph made a confession of faith. By God's grace, he had been able to move past his difficult and trying times. He was declaring that God had made him forget all his trouble and the pain associated with it. The lesson here is that we must not be bound by the past. A person like Joseph, who is free from the bitterness of the past, and who willingly and faithfully undertakes assigned tasks with hope, is a person whom God can use to accomplish his work. So Joseph lived his life faithfully and consistently, even in prison, and through this faithfulness God began a new work in his life. The seed of that new work was planted here, and it came to fruition 2 years later when the cupbearer, restored to his position, remembered Joseph when Pharaoh had a dream. Pharaoh had a dream that no one could interpret. At that moment the cupbearer recommended Joseph to Pharaoh. While the immediate reason Joseph became prime minister was his interpretation of Pharaoh's dream, the opportunity only arose because of what happened in our passage today. The cupbearer remembered Joseph because Joseph hadn't just walked past him in his despair. He had served faithfully, noticed his sadness, and interpreted his dream. It was because Joseph was unwavering, willing, and faithful in his given task that he had the opportunity to interpret their dreams. And it is through such a person that God begins a new work. The same is true in our lives. Though our circumstances may differ, we all have times like Joseph. We face situations where we feel wronged, resentful, and so upset that we want to give up. We may have difficult relationships or find ourselves in situations where it feels impossible to do our work well. We are also given tasks that seem insignificant, unrelated to our plans, and offer no apparent benefit. It is easy to think, "I can't do this," or "I don't want to do this." But I pray that we remember Joseph's example today. First, Joseph was freed from the pain of the past. In our own strength, past hurts and present difficulties can feel too heavy to bear, but as we seek God, I pray that He, by His grace, will free us from the grip of our pain and allow us to move forward. And second, I pray that we can be faithful, consistent, and wholehearted in our work, just like Joseph. He went beyond his status and did his best in everything he was given to do. Even when the task was ordered by someone who had wronged him, even when it seemed unimportant, he took it on willingly and faithfully. And it was through this faithful man that God performed a new and tremendous work. God is watching our lives today. If we, like Joseph, serve Him faithfully right where we are, God will entrust new tasks to us. And through those tasks, He will accomplish His will and His plans for this world through us. Therefore, our lives today are not meaningless. These are not just passing moments. Depending on how we respond in faith, the small details of our daily lives can become the stepping stones for God's amazing and great work. As we begin this day and this week, let us remember Joseph. I pray that, like him, we may overcome our trials through God's grace and serve with faithfulness, experiencing the success that comes only when God is with us. God will surely work today, and through our lives, He will begin the precious and beautiful works He has planned. May this be a day when God's beautiful work, which He desires to accomplish on this earth through each one of us, truly begins.